All right, welcome back to the shop. We're going to continue working on Project Pink Pony, this beautiful and rusty 1986 Tomasini Prestige. Today's going to be a little bit more of a discovery sort of episode. So we're going to figure out what's broken, what needs to be replaced, what tools we might need, because this is old campy and some Sax Hurray and some other random stuff. So let's dig into it. Let's go. So anybody that's worked on old cars or any sort of old equipment, bicycles included, knows that we need to use some of my favorite stuff, PB Blaster. It's basically a penetrating oil, and you're just going to put it on anything that might be rusty, might be stuck. So we're just going to give it a little spritz. That's it. We're going to let it sit for a while, and we're going to go with some other places that might need a spritz. Also, this tire is blown out anyway, so it doesn't really matter if it gets oily or anything. Little spritz, a little spritz, 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 double spritz. So just notice that this is a Jim Blackburn water bottle cage. Those are the older ones, because the newer ones just say Blackburn on them. Spritz. And for the bottom bracket, we're going to want a little bigger of a spritz. Hopefully this works to get the crank arms off and to get the bottom bracket out, because the next step after this hopefully wouldn't be destructive, but it might be fire. So we'll see. All right, while those things are working their magic, let's get the rear wheel out. As well as the front. The chain is actually a normal modern KMC, so we can just use our regular quick link pliers and dispatch it. Let's get the beautiful Campy Athena derailleur off, a little 5mm for the pinch bolt. We aren't reusing the cable, so. Oh, that's interesting. That should be staying on there. Okay, can't lose that. And also this little guy. This one we're going to hang on to as well, because this one has a step down part of it, and that's going to go into the braze-on right here. I mean, this is a piece that we have. You know, I could take it off the shelf, but, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle. So we'll hang on to that guy. 5mm for the rear derailleur. And here you can have a better look at those blue jockey wheels. Pretty cool, right? Doesn't really match the pink, but that's okay. These little dropout adjusters also need to come out, but you can see this one's kind of bent. So we're going to have to do a little bit of finagling to get this guy out. So we're going to figure out where it's most crooked. Then we're basically going to bend it. Hopefully it doesn't break. Much better. Grasp it. Grasp this thumb screw part with some pliers. Flathead goes into here and unscrew it. We probably didn't need to straighten it before we did this, but it can't hurt. In case for whatever reason, if it broke or something, then we would have to extract it from the other direction. And now we can get a very nice look at those beautiful campy dropouts. Can I also say how cool this chrome looks? Look at that. It's like a sword. Rear brake coming off, 5mm in the back. And I'm just going to cut the brake line, because we don't need it. Before going in for the deep clean, I like to just put the hardware right back on. so we don't lose anything. And same with the front brake. Ooh, that one was actually already loose. Ooh, there's some grime falling onto the floor underneath. I'm glad we spritzed. Ugh. Now, one thing about these brakes that I just remembered is that these adjusters do come out. So just remember to put them in the same bag or box that the rest of the brake lives. 8mm for this front derailleur bolt. This screw is actually pretty cool. It's a flared screw. It's pretty cool. 3mm for these down tooth adjusters. Uh-oh. We may have hit our first snag. These are very stuck. Let's see, put a little bit more torque into it. Oh, okay. Broke 3. You go back in. Come on, you. Yeah. Ugh. Woo. Put up a little bit of a fight. And same thing on the other side. All right, let's dig into these guys. The other set on the seat tube are actually broken off in the frame, so these are leading me to a little bit of concern. I tried moving them a little bit off camera to see if I was going to have to make some different life decisions, and I tried to move these a little bit off camera to see if I needed to get any extra tools or anything like that, and they are not happy. So let's see if we can get them out. Oh, whew. That one came out, did not break. Okay, this one is in much worse shape. Let's see if we can get any luck on this guy. Okay, nice snap, but did not snap the screw. Good. Drop your tools, that's part of this. 6mm on the stem. I'm going to put the wheel back in to get a little bit of extra leverage. Oh, I wish you had smell-o-vision. This is a scent. This is a scent right here. Ooh, I almost hit myself in the face. All right, this is sort of interesting. You can tell that this bike has been hanging for a long time because of the way that the headset is kind of indexed. It kind of bounces around center. And it always returns to center. So this bike has been hanging for a long time. All right, crankset time. This has kind of been saving the best for last because I know I have a very sneaky suspicion that we're going to need a special bottom bracket tool specifically for this generation. So let's get it out at least. Let's get as much as we can out and see what we need to order. So 15mm socket for the crank bolt. Oh. Okay. And there's a little washer. Okay. This is a Park Tool CCP2 crank puller. We're going to thread this portion in, and then this has a little plunger so that as you turn this, it pushes the plunger out and extracts the crank off of the spindle. So we're going to thread this guy in. Really, really, really try not to cross thread this. This is an important time. And these older ones, sometimes there's pitting or grease or gunk or something like that in it. So it can make it a little bit difficult. But all right, we're in. So keep this still, thread this in until it stops. So the plunger is going to push on the spindle, and this is going to pull the crankset off of the spindle. Oh, it is stuck. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Gotta put some real muscle in. Yeah. Okay. Look at that. And that easy to take it off. There's some fossilized grease on that spindle. And same thing on this side, on the non-drive side. Ooh, that was actually a little bit loose. Crank puller. Yeah. And of course, campy being campy, this spline doesn't match any of the bottom bracket tools that I have. So I've ordered a new one. Should be here tomorrow. All right, let's get this fork out. So it's going to go crown race, bearings, this pressed in cup with a race. It's going to have this pressed in cup with another race, adjustable top race, a couple washers, and then the lock nut. Let's put the wheel back in one more time just so we can get some extra leverage on all these things. And I have a headset wrench, HW02 from Park Tool. We're going to loosen the lock nut first. Oh, goodness gracious. Ooh. This grease has fossilized into like a glue. A couple spacers. It's a high gravity day here today. Now, once you start loosening this guy up, the fork is going to start drifting down because there's nothing holding it in place anymore. All right, that's loose. There's the ball bearings. All right, and the fork can come out. Honestly, the bearings actually look okay. They're not super pitted or deformed or anything like that. And with that indexing issue that we had mentioned earlier where the wheel is centering itself, what I always recommend people to do in that situation, if they don't want a new headset, is you take the bearings out, rotate them 90 degrees, and put them back in. And that solves it 9 times out of 10, at least for a while, for the next 30 years. All right, let's get these headset cups out. Pull this guy through the head tube till it pings. All right, now we can just hammer it up. One headset cup out. All right, let's do the upper one now. You'll see why I zoomed you out in a second. There we go. Same thing as the bottom one. All right, it's coming out. Hey! So I think this will pretty much give a good understanding of how a loose ball bearing 1-inch threaded headset works. So you have this crown race that's pressed onto the fork crown, bearings, this race that's pressed into the head tube, and the head tube sits here. This cup and this cup/race combo is pressed into the head tube. You have these bearings. You have this adjustable top nut cover race, a couple spacers. Usually there's one spacer, sometimes there's two. French bikes typically have even more. And then the lock nut, which when you have everything finally adjusted, then you lock this guy down. So one thing I'm not going to do is take off this fork crown race. This is mechanically pressed onto the fork crown. And number one, I don't have a fork crown race puller because all of ours are split crown races, so you can just take it on and off with the sealed bearings. It's not a big deal. But I've had these on older bikes pulling the crown race. I've seen them break. I've seen them get mangled. I've seen them crack. It's happy here. I don't want to mess with it, so it's going to continue living here. Also, I guess from the factory they wrote 57, since this is a 57 centimeter frame. While the bottom bracket tool is on its way to me, I figure, you know what, I'm going to get a head start and try to extract these screws, right? And so I got the extractor set, and I was going to go figure out what size I need, and then I was like, why is it squishy? And so I took out the bottom one. I think you'll enjoy this. Should have gone to dental school. Oh. was just kind of, there's somebody had put silicone in it. There it is. There's an imprint of the threads and everything. So that's one less thing that we need to worry about. I've never seen that before. All right, it's a few days later now. This spline, I was for certain was a Campy. So I ordered the tool to get it out, and wouldn't you know it, it doesn't fit. So after talking to Marzella Campy, he thought it was a fill. Now, I don't have a fill wood bottom bracket tool, but the spline looks correct, and on both sides of the bottom bracket shell, there is no flange that sits against it. So that's a telltale fill wood sign. And our friend Tommy at Cutlass Velo in Baltimore, he actually had the tool. So he was kind enough to let me borrow it. And wouldn't you know it, it fits right in. So pleasantly surprised, I think this is a Campy bottom bracket. Pleasantly surprised, I think this is a fill wood. Now it's Italian threaded, so to loosen it, we're gonna do counterclockwise. So let's see how it goes. Oh, it's stuck. It's stuck. Okay, this bottom bracket does not want to come out. I've tried all the tricks. I've tried big wrench. I've tried leverage with big wrench. I've tried kicking big wrench. I've tried hammering big wrench. And I even tried putting the tool in the vise and rotating the frame around the tool. Nothing worked. So you know what? Phil? You're welcome to live in this bottom bracket shell for as long as you want. Don't you love old bikes? All right, so next step is we're going to use some frame saver. This is the OG stuff made for Peter Weigel. So what this is a rust inhibitant. So it just has some chemicals in there. What you're going to do is you're going to spray it into the tubes. You're going to spin it around a whole bunch. You're going to let it marinate for a while and then rebuild the bike. So we're at that stage where we can now spray this stuff in the tube. We're going to spin it around and try not to make a mess. I have the door open so we can have some ventilation because this stuff is not good for you. We're going to spray it, put the paper towels in there so it doesn't make a complete mess, and then we're going to let it sit outside for a while. So at these junction points of the top tube and head tube and C tube and down tube, there are these little holes, basically just vent pressure, just vent gases as the frame is actually being produced. So I'm going to put the little nozzle into the hole that's in the C tube and top tube and spray it. So you can hear that. Oh, it's making a mess. So we're going to plug that up. Paper towels going in. So the only part of this bike we can't access is going to be the chainstays because there's no vent holes here. There should be a vent hole here. There are vent holes on the inside of the chainstays, but because the bottom bracket is in the way, they're inaccessible. So, c'est la vie. The other thing we can do is usually we would spray stuff from inside the bottom bracket into the down tube, but because the bottom bracket's in the way, it can't do that. So we're going to do it through the water bottle bosses. And there is a cutout on the underside of the bottom bracket, so it'll just let all of the gunk and whatever's accumulated over the years, rust, surface rust, it'll just drip out from the bottom. So let's get to it. Woo! That was not pleasant. Let's see if we can shove anything in there. All right, while it's still liquid, we're gonna spin it. All right, so we're sloshing, moving the fluid to coat it all over the inside of the tube. Spin it around, shake it all about. Don't do that with a new frame. All right, now we're gonna let this marinate overnight, but in the meantime, we can start disassembling the wheels and start getting things ready for assembly. And interestingly enough, the fork has teeniest, tiniest, cutest little vent holes, which doesn't fit the straw for the frame saver. So we're just going to run it. Like I said, it's been good for 40 years. It'll be good for another 40. And that is why steel is real. All right, now we're going to take the freewheel off. And one thing I noticed when I was taking the skewer off was that the axle looks a little bit bent. Now, it feels tight. It feels well within tolerances. And just out of, for giggles, how much is a new axle? Well, number one, you can't just buy a new axle for a Dura-Ace freewheel hub. And the hubs that are available are very expensive. So I think we're just going to leave it. It feels good. The bearings feel okay. There aren't any significant pinch points. So we're just going to run it. Freewheel tool going in the splines. It's pretty gunked up in there. So, all right, now it's in. Now we're going to put this into the vise. Tight. Now we're just going to drive the bus. We're going to turn the whole thing counterclockwise. If it wants to come out. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Spin the freewheel off the rest of the way. There we are. So it struck me that there are probably a lot of people that have actually never seen a freewheel hub before. So introducing a freewheel hub, as opposed to more common modern cassette hub, where all the cogs slide onto this spline, and then there's a lock ring that cinches everything down. A freewheel hub has all of the cogs on this cluster, and then this cluster threads onto the wheel. You're really not going to see this anymore, except for maybe some really cheap e-bikes and department store bikes, at least with multiple gears on it. You're still going to see this on track bikes and single speeds, but for multiple gears, this is antiquated. Next thing we're going to do is start disassembling this hub. Because this is a loose ball bearing hub, we're going to remove the axle and see what condition the races and the cones are and the bearings. And if it's in good shape, which it probably is, just put everything back together with fresh grease and put it back. So we're going to put the drive side of the axle onto our little axle holder. I don't actually know what this is called, but it says Park Tool AV4 on it. This is just going to require two 14mm cone wrenches. So you're going to hold the bottom one and loosen the top. Now the top is loose. Okay. Little washer. And you can check the correct orientation because the serrated side is always going to be on the outside. Then we're going to take this cone off. Oh yeah, it's grimy in there. Now we're going to remove the axle. Being very careful. The bearings should stay in place because they have, oh no, spoke too soon. And we put them over the towel because as we're pulling them out, if we lose any, they're just gonna fall onto the towel. And repeat on the drive side. The screwdriver is actually magnetic, which is kind of cool too. I'm sure there's a real tool for this. Oh, I dropped it. Now, pro tip. Whenever you drop something in the shop that's small, don't try to kick it or catch it. Look where it's going. Instead of, because if you try to kick it and make sure it doesn't hit the ground or try to Spider-Man it, you're going to kick it under the bench and it's going to be gone forever. So watch where it goes and then pick it up. Okay, now that the bearings are out, you can see that these races are gross. Here's the before. And here's the after. Just a couple swabs with a microfiber. And then we're going to go in with some cleaner and degreaser, and then we're going to fill it back in with grease. Another thing you can do for the inside of the hub, it's really grimy in there too. So you just take the end of the rag, kind of jam it in there until it goes all the way through, and give it a nice little floss. Just like how you floss your ears, right? Don't we all do that? Nice and clean. Before and after. Now you're probably noticing I did not take apart the drive side because there's just a lot more spacers and there's just a lot more going on here. So you could take apart everything and put it back together with measurements and stuff, but I found that that's not really fruitful and it takes a lot more time. So I usually leave the drive side on unless I have to take everything apart, and then just reassemble everything and tighten everything down from the non-drive. It's just a lot easier that way. So one thing I'm noticing is these drive side races, they should look like this. This looks nice and shiny, but most of it looks like this. That's a lot of pitting. But to be honest, this is just going to be a town runabout for me. And like I said, I can't get all of these little pieces anymore. It feels fine, even with the old sludgy grease. So we're just going to kind of reassemble. Bearings going into, this is just a mix of alcohol, just to clean everything up. Then we're going to take them out and dry them off on a fresh towel. All right, these bearings are nice and shiny and clean. They're going to be ready to go back into the hub. And don't forget about those dust caps. Ugh. Hub boogers. All right, next thing we're going to do is start putting the ball bearings in. So now that everything is nice and clean, we're going to take our grease, put it all in the races, and then put the bearings in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 9. One big happy little bearing family. Put some grease on the dust cap too. Get everything nice and sealed. And then we just kind of press it in. That's it. Okay. Put the drive side of the axle through the drive side. And we're going to flip it around. And we're just going to get things kind of generally where they're going to be. So I'm going to put the cone on first. Little washer, and then lock nut. Okay, now from here we just need to do some adjustment because it is very notchy right now. So there are 2 nuts that are going to control the adjustment of the actual bearings and how tight or how loose they are. This one is the actually adjusting nut, and this one on top is the lock nut. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust it so that it's a little bit tight, just a little hair tight, and then we're going to screw the lock nut down. And then we're going to loosen the lower nut. I wish that there was an easier way to describe this, but it just takes practice. You're going to be doing this over and over and over again until there's enough play that there isn't play, but that it's not too tight. So now I got it perfectly adjusted where there's enough movement that everything is very smooth without having any sort of lateral or vertical play. Okay, now we're going to do the front. Pretty much the same as the rear, but a lot simpler because it's symmetrical. All right, now with this one, you need a 13 millimeter instead of the 14. This feels very loose. There is something going on here. That shouldn't be just loose like that. So, yeah, This was just on finger tight. Not a good sign. Okay, a couple washers. Everything looks pretty good. Just kind of dry and gross. All right, now we're on the other side of disassembly. Now we get to reassemble. So first thing is, let's clean this frame up and take a really good inspection at some of these rust spots, sand them down, make sure everything is okay, and start assembling. All right, so here's one of these rust spots that's really bad. This is the underside of the top tube and head tube junction. So let's hit it some sandpaper. This is 225 grit. Going at this with a while. Sometimes you just want to fold this guy over and kind of get into those nooks and crannies in between the lug and the tube. This is looking okay. I'm gonna keep going at this for a little bit longer. Catch you in a minute. All right, this is all looking pretty okay. That black there is just oxidation, but there aren't any cracks or anything like that, so we're in good shape. All right, now we're gonna do the headset. We're gonna keep them in the races because I've had it happen before where I try to get the ball bearings out of the races and the race breaks, and then we're gonna be SOL. So we're gonna keep them in here and just clean them up. But you can see how it's stuck. Calcified oatmeal is in there. We're not looking for perfection out of this thing. We're looking for function. We're gonna shake it up and mix it all around. And then after this is done, we're going to take them out and we're going to give them a nice cleaning. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because not everyone has a parts washer at their house. This is really cheap and easy. You know, most people are going to have just plain old alcohol at their house, and they're going to have some plastic bags. So that's really all you need to get this done. And a whole bunch of paper towels. That's all you need. Do this at home. Throw it back in the bath for a little bit. I can see some writing coming up. Made in Italy. 1 inch by 24 TPI. England. So it's an English thread. It's an English thread, Italian headset. Anyway, you get the idea. We're going to clean everything up. We're going to get these ball bearings also cleaned up nicely. And then we're going to put the headset back into the frame. Grease there. And grease on the bottom. And a little bit on the cups. This is the top one. And this is the bottom one. Line up the logos. We could put the Campy logo out to the side because that's how I like it. And headset going in. Headset in. Now this next step is fairly optional as far as the way I'm going to do it, but anybody that's packed any hub bearings in their cars knows it's going to happen now. So we're just going to take a little scoop of the forbidden jelly right there, and we're just going to work it all in there. It really helps to get all of the grease in between the bearing and the cage. So you're definitely going to want some gloves for this. This is my favorite flavor, by the way. Favorite flavor. NLGI2. Good old NLGI2. All right. Now these are ready to go onto the races. In the case of this headset, you want both the bearings to be facing down. So the cage part is facing up. And for the upper ones, we're going to have it facing this way. So the cage is facing up, the bearings are facing down. And I already filled the upper cup, or the upper race, with grease, so we can just screw that guy on. You want to make sure that these bearings are tight, but not too tight. So that's too tight. You want them to be spin freely without any notchiness. Washers. Now, interesting thing that I forgot to mention before, these are keyed. So there's a little notch here, and there are matches in the back of the fork. English and French forks have different notches. French are more flat. Feels good. Okay, I couldn't find a proper headset wrench, but I found some really old dead calipers that we don't use anymore. So this is pretty much what those are used for, right? So we're going to go ahead and make our adjustment. I want to try out some bars before we wrap up this video. You know, this is kind of the best way to do it. Don't care about the tape anymore. Don't care about the bars. You can just cut them off, just like this. Just cut off the tape. You can unwrap it if you want, but anyway, I'm going with the destructive method. I want to reuse this stem because it's really cool and it's in good shape. And overall, the bike is a little bit long with drop bars for me. So with flat bars, I think I can reuse this stem length and go with some flat bars. And I think we're going to be golden. So I'm going with the destructive method. About ready to take the drifters off. So it looks like a 5mm. Ugh, gross. Now we'll go ahead and just slide these off the bars. Bolt from the backside. I'm actually going to take the bolt all the way out because I'm going to put some grease on it. Oh, the joys of quill stems. Non-removable faceplate quill stems. All right, cool. We got the stem. Let's give it a little shine and then throw it on the bike. If you notice, this bolt is keyed, and on the actual stem there's actually 2 keys, one of which is from probably the previous owner forcing it to tighten, whereas the actual one is in the middle. So we're not going to make that mistake, are we? So basically, we're going to be talking about clamp diameters. This one uses a 26.0. There's basically 4 standards for clamp diameters for handlebars. This one is 26.0, which is traditional sort of legacy drop bars. 31.8 is more modern stuff with flat bars, mountain bike bars, and drop bars. 25.4 is traditional legacy flat bars. And then there's 22.2 for BMX and some steel bars. Now, in order to mate this 25.4 Velo Orange Milan bar to the 26.0 Cinelli stem, you just use these very thin stainless steel shims. We offer them in 35 and 45mm widths. These are the 35mm option. Looks pretty good. There's always going to be a little bit of an overhang, but it's hardly noticeable once everything's together. All right, stem going in. 6mm to tighten it. Yeah, that looks really good. Wait, should we slam it? Yeah, we should slam it. That's pretty much as far down as it goes. Looks sick. And would you look at that? A rolling chassis. In the next episode, we'll go ahead and put all the doodads and parts on. But until then, thank you for watching. Happy riding.